Sam, all by my lonesome again. Patty is still in Tennessee. And since we chatted last, I was in Santa Fe. And then that morning I recorded the podcast. I jumped in the RV and I drove to a place. I only drove for an hour that day. I drove to a place called Ojo Caliente. And it is this amazing hot spring about an hour outside of Santa Fe. I don't know how many pools they have. I feel like it's like 10 or something, but it's this beautiful little resort and they have a little RV park. It's just like a dirt parking lot where you can plug your RV in. But the resort was outstanding and all the pools, and it's up against this beautiful red rock cliff. So I spent a night there and that was great. And then I drove all day to make it to St. George, Utah, where my little sister Liz lives with her husband Cha and her daughter Sammy, who's named after me. That's so special. Um, and I spent a couple of nights there until the house that we rented was available. So now I'm in Kanab, Utah, which is only about an hour and a half away from St. George. And Patty and I are going to spend a couple months here. So, our plan for the next few years is to just sort of move around and try different places. And Kanab, it's a funky little town in southern Utah. It's right by Arizona. In fact, Page, I think, is like an hour, maybe an hour and a half away, which is right there where you can get into Lake Powell is right there. We're close to the Grand Canyon. We're close to Bryce Canyon. We're close to Zion. There's all these amazing national parks that we've been to. We've been to all of them, but we haven't spent any good amount of time down here. And I love hiking. I love the desert. So I'm super excited to be here for a couple of months. So I checked into this little house that we rented for the next few months. I guess it's been 2 days ago. And I'm just trying to get settled in. And I woke up to a 17-degree morning here. So you think about the desert, you think it's hot, but this is high desert. I think it's like 5,000 feet here, maybe. And so it gets cold. And unfortunately, so when we left Utah, we put some of our, we sold most of our stuff, but we do have a little storage unit and we put all of our winter clothes in the storage unit because we were only going to be gone for the summer. So I have this one sweater and that BB gave me, Patty's mom gave me this beautiful sweater from Peru. No, maybe, yeah, I think it is Peru. I think she bought it in Peru. She didn't like it or it didn't fit her right. So I'm very grateful to have this one sweater. I have a couple sweatshirts. I do have my puffy coat and I have this hat. So I'll be okay, but tomorrow I'm flying up to Salt Lake. I need to have a few meetings with some people and then um, get Patty and mine, get our winter clothing out to bring down here because it's not hot. It's not hot down here. I kind of, because it's in the desert and it's in the southern part of Utah. And I mean, it's not too far from Vegas. I mean, I knew it was going to get cold. I just didn't realize how cold it was going to get. So it's been the surprise, but I'm excited. And getting ready for my TEDx talk still. I've had a couple of calls with the coach and had a few kind of difficult days going through the content. There were some misunderstanding between them and me about the content and the intent and what I can and can't do, what I can and can't say. But it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be great. I'm again back to very excited and they aren't changing much. So that's really great. And it's going to be good. I'm feeling very happy and excited about it this morning, but I still have a lot of work to do. Okay, so that's an update on me. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about something that you really want to hear. So last time we talked about libido, and today and we talked a little bit about arousal, but I want to talk more about sexual arousal. I want to talk about So I kind of, when we were talking last time about spontaneous desire and responsive desire, and that those are the two kinds of libidos. I think there are some other people who have described other kinds of libidos. I'm just not sure how helpful that is. Um, but there is something that is discussed when you're talking about sexual arousal. And Emily Nagoski, who is a world-renowned sex educator, who I feel like I'm one of her apostles, sort of. Like, she is doing brilliant work in the world. She has 3 different TED Talks. Go listen to all of them if you want to know any more about sex. She goes deep into the science. I skim the surface. And she has a book, Come As You Are, and she just put out another book called Stressed Out. I have that book. Um I have not read it yet, but she does such a great job of explaining very complex science about sex, simply so you can understand it. So she talks about this idea of context, meaning you have your libido and your spontaneous responsive desire. By the way, spontaneous desire is still responsive desire. You're still responding to something that's turning you on. It's just happening so fast it seems like it's happening immediately, whereas responsive desire, it could take some time to get going. So anyway, she has this idea of context. It's not her idea, by the way. This is science. This is she's repeating other people's ideas, but in a way that it's easily understandable. So she has this great TED talk. It's called oh yeah, the keys to a happier, healthier sex life. It's funny, it's entertaining, and she goes into depth about this idea of context. And the way I think about it, I said in the last one, um, not sex. Stress is a huge libido killer, right? It makes everything difficult to want to engage in. Not just sex, but specifically sex. And the funny thing about stress too is that sex reduces stress. So if you give in and decide to say yes to sex during a stressful time, you're going to feel better afterwards if you can get to arousal. But this idea of context is sort of, everything else that's going on in your life. If it's causing a lot of stress, or you're in grief, or other things are happening that you can't get to a state of enough relaxation to get to sexual arousal. It's a thing, sometimes we just can't get there. And that, she has another talk too, where she talks a little bit about not herself, like not being able to get there after having been, on the road with with her book and writing the book. And I mean, all that's very, very stressful. And how she just, she would put herself in the position of trying to trying to create some intimacy with her husband, but just like crying instead. So sometimes we just have shit going on, Sometimes there's just so much stuff that we can't, we're sort of in our own way. And I think it's I think it's good to recognize that that exists. Just and call it what it is. Like, sometimes we just can't get there. But again, I'm always a proponent for at least trying, at least putting yourself in the position where you could allow yourself to become aroused, and also working on those things that are creating context that don't allow you to have sex, because that's not just affecting your sex life, that is affecting you as a person. It's affecting everybody. Like, if you're so tense that you can't relax enough to have sex, you have, like, that's something to be investigating in your life. So I just wanted to say it. I just want to tell you, go watch that TED talk, because she does a much better job. She talks about the science, um, and she's awesome. So, context. The other thing I want to talk about, sexual arousal, is when it doesn't happen, or when it's happening at an uncomfortable time. So sometimes when Patty and I are getting frisky and I'm really into it and I'm really turned on and I'm really ready, sometimes, it's it's like the Sahara down there. I'm not lubricating at all. And this isn't just because I'm creeping up on menopause, which I think I am. I'm getting to that age. It's not happening just now. This happened like even when we first got together. And he'd be like, "Oh, you're not, I can tell you're not into this." And I was like, "What? I'm totally into this. I'm really turned on." And he'd be like, "No, you're not." And I was hard to convince him, "No, I am. Like, let's keep going." And this is what scientists refer to as arousal non-concordance. And all that means is that when we're the way we feel, whether we're feeling like having sex or not feeling like having sex, and what our genitals are doing, they aren't in alignment, right? There's a disconnect. And this happens in men also. Like if you just think about, morning wood or your slumber lumber, you're not waking up every morning horny. You're waking up out of REM sleep, which happens all night long, by the way. Anytime you're in REM sleep, you get an erection, and it's called nocturnal penile tumescence. It doesn't mean you're horny, it means you were in REM sleep. So this doesn't just happen to women who aren't lubricating when they're super turned on. It also is happening to men. Men have more concordance, meaning when they're feeling horny and their genitals are doing the right thing. And women, we have a little less. Well, we have a lot less. Um, so this is kind of where tumescence, peanut, nocturne, your morning wood, that would be an example of where, maybe your boner's sort of like a nuisance, like, oh, I wish I wasn't turned on right now. And my example is more like, I wish, or not turned on, you're not even turned on, but I wish I wasn't having an erection right now. It's a little bit annoying. Whereas for me and my non lubrication, that's also a little annoying. But on the other end, right? I'm turned on, but it's not my genitals aren't responding the way I want them to. And I think everybody, once you get to a certain age, this is you have experience with this. I mean, men have experience with this in puberty, right? You're having erections and it's an awkward time. As you get older, it's going to go the other way, right? Where you're going to be turned on and your penis isn't doing what you want it to be doing. It just happens. It's part of aging. It's part of hormones. It's part of life. So understanding that this is a normal, very common, in fact, I'm going to tell you about a scientific study in a minute, but this is normal. This is nothing to be ashamed about. This doesn't mean you're broken. This doesn't mean you have ED. This doesn't mean, you're never, your vagina is terminally dry. I mean, it's none of those things. And luckily we live in this world, this day and age where if we're experiencing non-concordance, arousal non-concordance, and we, want to get frisky, women have lube. Just grab the lube. Who cares? There's no judgment. There should be no guilt or shame about that. And same with men. Like there's lots of things that are available for men if they aren't popping an erection when they want one. um I wanted to go back to something, but now I can't remember what it was. Oh well, I'll remember in a minute. I'm just going to keep talking. So this idea of arousal non-concordance, it can also go the other way. Oh, I wanna talk about how often it's happening. Okay. Oh, and my scientific research that I know about. Okay, so there were a couple of studies, and actually I think there's more than a couple. There's been probably half a dozen where they've done this research to measure concordance, arousal concordance and non-concordance. So they bring people into a lab and they hook up various kinds of devices to measure genital arousal. And it could be like something, well, I don't need to get into details, but they have different types of measurements of measuring arousal. Some of them have proven to be more accurate than others. They've also even done MRIs while these experiments are happening. So they do that, and then they show a variety of different kinds of films, like just normal, like the sunset and the waves crashing, and then they show some porn, and then they show different kinds of porn. And while you're sitting there, while the subjects are sitting there, they they have a dial, and as they're feeling turned on, they turn the dial up, and as if they're not turned on, they turn the dial down. And so they've conducted a number of these experiments, and generally speaking, men, they have arousal concordance approximately half the time, which also means half the time they're experiencing non-concordance, meaning their genitals aren't reacting to what they feel. Like if they're feeling horny, but their genitals aren't reacting, or vice versa, that's they're having the disconnect. And with women, this was shocking to me. I mean, it still is. Only 10% of the time are women experiencing concordance. And not only that, so that means 90% of the time they're experiencing non-concordance. And again, this is in the lab. So, you have to take that with a grain of salt, whether that's exactly how it works in the real world. But the other thing about women, so men were pretty consistent in that if men associate themselves as heterosexual and they're watching heterosexual porn or girl on girl porn, they're generally getting an erection. Whereas, or a gay man, and he's watching gay porn, he's generally having concordance during those kinds of um, scenes, and then not being aroused by other things, other kinds of porn. Whereas women, they can't really figure out what turns us on or turns us off. We seem to react to a lot of Dr. Nagoski refers to as, like, Emily Nagoski refers to it as sexually relevant versus sexually appealing. So women react to a lot of things that are sexually relevant, but not but but it's not sexually appealing. And the example that's used in the research that got a lot of press along, it's been a number of years in the New York Times, and the researcher Meredith Chivers was quoted in there about some of these studies. They were showing, um, I think it's a kind of monkey, bonobos. I hope I'm saying that right. So they showed this bonobo porn, and it's not porn. They showed monkeys having sex, and men, that didn't turn them on. They didn't find it. They were having concordance. Their genitals weren't doing anything, and they also said they weren't turned on. Whereas women, they they don't find that appealing. That doesn't turn them on, and yet their genitals were in some way reacting. But so that's interesting, right? So women's genitals seem to react to a lot of different things, whereas men's are more specific. But women's genitals are also um precise in the way that only things that are sexually relevant seem to create the genital response. So like when women are watching, the sunrise or the waves, they're experiencing concordance in those kinds of situations where they're not turned on and their genitals aren't doing anything. But it was the other way with some of the other things. And so that's an interesting, I just think that's so interesting. And and here we have, so it's happening. So not arousal non-concordance, it's normal. It's happening to all of us all the time. And yet, we take that personally when we're getting frisky with our partners and they aren't, you know, their vaginas aren't lubricating, or, your partner's not getting an erection, and you're thinking, oh, you must not think I'm sexy. You don't want to make love to me, when really probably all that's happening is non-concordance, and it's normal and it's happening to everybody. And we just need to remove the shame about that, the guilt. We need to not take something personally that isn't personal. It's just not personal. And unfortunately, like almost every, society, media, they continue to perpetuate this idea that if a woman is lubricating, it means she's turned on. Or if a man has an erection, it means he's, turned on and they're horny. They want to have sex. They're sexually aroused. They're, mind and body all in. But it's just not true. A good example, again, just to use myself as an example, when I go get bikini waxes, which hurts like a motherfuck, like tears come out of my eyes and I'm gritting my teeth. And um, sometimes I lubricate. And there's nothing sexy about that at all. It's awful. In fact, I should go back to shaving or something. But Patty likes it like that, and I like it when Patty likes it like that, so I'll probably keep waxing. But it is awful. But I lubricate during that, and that is really, it's awkward, but it's arousal non-concordance. There's nothing that I'm enjoying about that. Okay, and on that note, I'm gonna wrap it up. Um, Next time, actually, I might have to. Yeah, I'm going to Salt Lake, and then Patty and I are conducting a wedding ceremony in Mexico, um, for the week before the TEDx talk. So it's going to be a crazy time. This run up. Thanks for being here with us, and I hope you learned a little something today. And spread the truth. Spread the truth about how sex works, because I feel like the misunderstandings and the misinformation that we have about it, it's hurting people and people in their relationships. Responsive desire, arousal non-concordance. I I I think you should tell everybody you know. Okay. I hope everybody has a lovely day. Thanks for listening. Bye.